The New York Knicks make a blockbuster trade, acquiring Mikal Bridges from the Brooklyn Nets. And I got to talk to Bryan Fonseca and get his reaction about this deal. Bryan, the Knicks make this monster move. What is your reaction to this move?
I threw my phone as I was watching the Liberty game because I was so surprised that we got a move. Occasionally, we do get a big move before the trade deadline. This is something that the Nets actually pulled off several years ago when they got D'Angelo Russell, not before the trade deadline, but before the draft. When they got D'Angelo Russell a couple nights before the draft, trading Brook Lopez. This is obviously a lot bigger than that because this comes at a time where we've been talking about since last year the Knicks are gearing up for a move. The Knicks are gearing up for a move. They have all these draft picks. They have all the first round draft picks. They can package this first star. Is it going to be Devin Booker? Is it going to be this person? Are they going to move Julius Randle? And now we have an answer to this. They still have some picks, but whew, they give up a lot for Mikal Bridges. And there are a lot of layers to this, but the main thing is that the cipher is complete. The Villanova Knicks are here. You have Jalen Brunson, you have Josh Hart, you have Mikal Bridges, and I mean, this fits how they want to play. The new Knicks culture. You saw what they needed in the playoffs was another shot creator who could defend. Mikal Bridges, from a basketball standpoint, makes a lot of sense in that regard. He is a big wing. In today's NBA, you want as many big wings as possible. A team with two-star big wings just won the championship. So this is why this makes a lot of sense, even though it's a big ask. And listen, this is the Knicks announcing to everybody, like, yeah, this is basically championship or bust or finals or bust territory for us at this point.
Yeah, Bryan, I mean, we see the details from Woj when you have a Woj bomb like this. Four unprotected first round picks, Bojan Bogdanovic, protected first round pick from the Bucks, an unprotected pick swap and a second rounder. So they gave up a ton to your point, and they had to get this move. So this begs the question: besides just getting Mikal Bridges, a superstar like forward and player for this team to take them over the edge, what does this ultimately mean for OG Anunoby, a guy that they traded for this past deadline, right? Help them make the playoffs, be the two seed in the East. You know, he ends up getting hurt, doesn't finish the playoffs with them, declines his player option. He's now a free agent. Ultimately, does this mean the Knicks are not going to end up keeping and re-signing OG Anunoby?
Yeah, and there was a report from The Athletic that was like, he's kind of got them over a barrel in terms of the negotiation. We'll see. But I mean, listen, it makes this interesting because you give up what you give up for OG Anunoby, which is not a little bit. It was Emmanuel Quickly and RJ Barrett. It wasn't picks, but it was two players who were sort of young cornerstones of your franchise at one point or another. And now there's questions about you resigning him because the price is steep. Well, Mikal Bridges has been better so far in the NBA. Probably isn't as dynamic as a defender necessarily, but was originally a high level defender, all defense level defender before having to have more of an offensive role with the Nets post Kevin Durant trade. And he's been sort of miscast in his role. Like he's not somebody who should be the number one option on your offense necessarily. Guess what? In New York, he doesn't have to be that. He could be number three. Some nights he could be number two, but he could be number three behind Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle, assuming that that piece of this stays intact. With OG Anunoby now, like if you're resigning him, now you have to ask yourself some questions about the second apron because that's when this summer, like this summer, that's going to be a thing league wide. And I do wonder how much you're going to have to pay to keep this roster together. It's why we're seeing them talk about, hey, Mitchell Robinson could be on the move. They want to sign Isaiah Hartenstein for a reasonable price. The Knicks are trying to be responsible with their finances here. And I could argue, based on injury history, based on past performance, Mikal Bridges is probably going to be on more of a bargain than OG Anunoby's next contract. So if you have to choose, is OG Anunoby really $5 to $10 million better than Mikal Bridges? I'm not sure. And you pay a steep price for Mikal Bridges, I think, because you're ensuring that if OG Anunoby walks, and maybe it increasingly looks like that may be the case, that you have somebody in place who is comparable and who can impact both sides of the ball just as much, if not more.
Bryan, ultimately, I think the final question here is how are the Nets able to stomach this type of trade? You're trading to your inner city rival, the New York Knicks, the big brother, right? You just gave them possibly the final piece that the Knicks are hoping to get and build that championship roster. So, one, how are the Nets able to stomach this type of trade? I understand it was a steep ask and a steep trade they got in return, but for them and their fan base, what are you saying to them ultimately? And then the other question is, does this move put the Knicks over the edge? Do you think this is championship or bust with the way this team is currently constructed?
Yeah, so on the Nets piece, maybe go sign OG Anunoby. Like, I'm not sure because this is maybe another signal from the Nets. Like, they were a team linked to Donovan Mitchell before, and Donovan Mitchell increasingly doesn't look like he's going anywhere. Like, there's been more reports and more belief in NBA circles that he is going to resign with the Cleveland Cavaliers. So he's going to be one of the stars that's off the table. And this summer is getting a little bit weird now if you're the Nets, who's in this in between phase. And this is not even like they were in the early Sean Marks era where they were developing guys and, establishing a culture. Now it's just this weird in between period, and you still have Ben Simmons' contract out there. So I'm not really sure what the Nets are going to do, but stockpiling picks, I mean, is a good option. Like, it could be a lot worse, and you could continue to do that as you figure out what you're going to do and just sell your fans on a rebuild. As for the Knicks, I mean, does this put them ahead of the Celtics? I'm not sure. I wouldn't go that far, but I mean, we don't know what Philadelphia is going to look like. We don't know what Milwaukee is going to look like, although we have a pretty good idea of what they're going to look like. And they're trying to, balance their cap sheet because there's reports about them potentially moving on from Bobby Portis and Pat Connaughton because they want to reshape their roster. And then with the Heat, there's a Jimmy Butler question mark that we don't even know how we're going to get to the bottom of that. Speaking of the Nets, their old coach, Kenny Atkinson, who's the best coach they've had in 10 plus years since the entire time that they've been in Brooklyn, honestly, is going to be with the Cleveland Cavaliers. And now they're going to look like a team that's interesting who could possibly get something for Darius Garland if they decide to move on from him, which, is appearing more and more likely based on what you hear from like NBA circles and reports and things of that nature. So I think the Knicks are firmly in the mix once again. And I think ultimately they're one of the top four-ish teams in the Eastern Conference today, top three-ish teams in the Eastern Conference today, if you're power ranking who's going to be the best contenders coming out. But ultimately, they got to get guys healthy this summer still, and we'll see how this works out. But I think Mikal Bridges is a beautiful basketball fit. It's a steep price to pay, but if it doesn't look like OG Anunoby is coming back, and honestly, if you make this trade, he's probably not, then I think it's a win-win from a basketball standpoint, and you can continue to build your team the way you want.
Bryan, what a shocking move tonight, obviously, right on the eve of the NBA draft. We appreciate you as always just giving us your reaction and breaking down what the heck just happened with the Knicks. Thank you, man.
Absolutely. Anytime.